Picture this. You're about to make a purchase that shouldn't be a big deal. Maybe it's a $40 shirt or a $100 dinner reservation. Your bank account says you can afford it, but something inside you freezes. Not because of the money itself, but because you can hear your father's voice warning you about wasting money. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're about to drop $500 on something you don't need because spending feels like the only way to prove you've made it. Either way, you're not really making this decision. Someone else is making it through you. My name's Alex, and I've spent the last decade studying the invisible forces that control how we think about money. Not market forces or interest rates, but the psychological programming that happens before we're old enough to understand what money even is. According to financial psychology research, approximately 70% of our money decisions are driven by unconscious programming rather than rational analysis. That's not a typo. 7 out of every 10 financial choices you make aren't really yours at all. Here's something that will mess with your head. By the time you're 7 years old, your fundamental beliefs about money are already locked in place. Not your knowledge about compound interest, but your deep programming about whether money is scarce or abundant, whether wealthy people are good or evil, and whether you deserve to have money. Research shows that children develop financial attitudes through socialization, influenced by family, peers, and societal norms during their earliest years. This programming comes from watching how your parents fought about bills, from hearing what relatives said about rich people, from noticing which kids got the nice things. Psychologists call these patterns money scripts, and they're running in the background of your mind every day. It's like having malware installed on your brain's operating system, except the malware was put there by people who loved you and had no idea they were doing it. These scripts are so powerful that you can give two people identical incomes and identical opportunities, and they'll end up in completely different places financially because their money scripts are telling different stories. Let me give you a real example. Sarah and Jennifer are twins who grew up in the same household. When they were 8, their father lost his job during a recession. For 6 months, the family struggled financially. Both girls witnessed the same stress, the same arguments about bills, the same fear in their parents' eyes. But they internalized completely different lessons. Sarah developed a scarcity script. Her unconscious conclusion was that money is never guaranteed and you need to hoard resources because disaster could strike at any moment. Fast forward 25 years, and Sarah has a $180,000 salary, but still shops at thrift stores, refuses to go on vacation, and has panic attacks when her savings drops below $100,000. She saved $340,000 by age 33, putting her in the top 5% of savers, but she experiences more financial anxiety than someone with $5,000 and no worries. Jennifer watched the same events, but concluded money is temporary, so you might as well enjoy it while you have it. She makes the same $180,000 salary, but has basically nothing saved. Every dollar goes right back out for experiences and lifestyle upgrades. She's driving a leased EMW, living in a $3,200 per month apartment, taking international trips 3 times a year. Her net worth is negative $43,000, but she feels more financially secure than her sister with $250,000 in savings. Same childhood, same trauma, opposite financial behaviors. Neither is being logical. They're both controlled by unconscious money scripts installed during a formative experience decades ago. And here's the disturbing part. Sarah thinks Jennifer is irresponsible. Jennifer thinks Sarah is paranoid. They're both right and both wrong because they're both operating from unconscious programming rather than conscious choice. The most common money scripts fall into 4 categories. First is money avoidance, where people unconsciously believe money is bad or they don't deserve it. They'll sabotage their own success by undercharging for services or forgetting to invoice clients. Second is money worship, where people believe more money will solve all problems. They're never satisfied because no amount delivers the happiness they're chasing. Third is money status, where people use money to measure self-worth and judge others. They're trapped buying things to appear successful. Fourth is money vigilance, where people believe constant anxiety about money is the price of security. You don't have just one script. You have several, sometimes contradictory ones running simultaneously. Maybe you're disciplined about retirement, but blow money on impulse purchases. These aren't character flaws. They're evidence of competing money scripts installed at different times by different experiences. The origin goes deeper than childhood. You're carrying scripts passed down through generations. If your grandparents lived through the Great Depression, that trauma created scripts that got passed to your parents, then to you. According to Federal Reserve data, Americans inherit an average of $46,200 during their lifetimes. But the psychological inheritance of money scripts has far more impact on financial outcomes than the actual money inherited. Breaking free from these scripts is possible, but it requires examining your unconscious beliefs, tracing them to their origins, and consciously deciding whether they still serve you. The first step is simply noticing your scripts in action. Pay attention when you have strong emotional reactions to financial situations. These automatic thoughts are breadcrumbs leading back to your money scripts. Understanding money scripts doesn't just explain your current situation, it predicts your financial future. Unless you intervene and deliberately rewrite these scripts, you'll keep playing out the same patterns for the rest of your life. Once you see these scripts operating, you can't unsee them, and that awareness is the first requirement for actual change. But here's what nobody talks about. Even after you identify your money scripts and understand where they came from, there's a second transformation that happens when your financial situation actually changes. Because it's one thing to have beliefs about money when you're broke, it's another thing entirely when you start accumulating real wealth. That's when your money scripts don't just influence your behavior, they start rewriting your entire identity, changing who you are at a fundamental level. And that transformation is where things get really interesting. There's a specific moment that happens to almost everyone who accumulates significant wealth, and nobody warns you about it. You're standing in line at a coffee shop, and suddenly you realize something disturbing. You're not the same person you were 3 years ago. Not just older or more experienced, fundamentally different. The way you think, the things you care about, the people you relate to, all of it has shifted, and you can't pinpoint exactly when it happened. Money doesn't just change your bank account, it rewrites your personality at a neurological level. Research analyzing personality traits across different wealth bands found that high wealth was associated with higher risk tolerance, emotional stability, openness, and conscientiousness. But here's the part that will mess with your head. This rich personality profile was significantly more prominent among people who accumulated wealth through their own efforts compared to those who inherited it. The process of becoming wealthy actually transforms who you are, not just what you have. Let me show you what this looks like. Michael started a software company at age 26, making $42,000 per year. He was anxious, socially awkward, obsessively detail-oriented. 10 years later, his company sold for $28 million, leaving him with $11 million after taxes. When I interviewed him 2 years after the acquisition, he described feeling like a stranger was inhabiting his body. Decisions that would have paralyzed him for weeks at $42,000 now took minutes at $11 million net worth. He'd become more extroverted, more comfortable in social situations, and paradoxically, less anxious about money than when he had far less of it. But Michael also noticed something darker. His empathy had diminished. Studies from UC Berkeley found that wealthier people are measurably worse at reading others' facial expressions, a key marker of empathy, than people of lower economic status. Stories about financial struggle that would have moved Michael to tears 5 years earlier now triggered an internal response of, well, they should have made better choices. He found himself judging people based on financial success in ways that would have horrified his younger self. Here's the disturbing part. Research shows that higher income consistently predicts whether people feel more positive self-regard emotions like confidence, pride, and determination. But income showed no consistent link to emotions people feel about others, such as love, compassion, or empathy. You literally become more confident and less compassionate at the same time. In one study, wealthier subjects given the opportunity to steal money from another participant took more money and reported feeling less sympathy for their victim. The correlation was direct. The wealthier the person, the less they cared about who they were hurting. The transformation follows a predictable pattern. Neuroticism, characterized by emotional volatility and anxiety, decreases steadily as wealth increases. Billionaires demonstrate significantly higher emotional stability than those in lower wealth bands. Accumulating wealth literally makes you calmer and more stable, but the price is your ability to connect with others' emotional experiences. The most dramatic version of this transformation is sudden wealth syndrome, a psychological condition affecting people who come into money unexpectedly. The symptoms include anxiety, panic attacks, depression, and paranoia. A 2010 study of 35,000 lottery winners who received between $50,000 and $150,000 found that 1,900 had filed for bankruptcy within 5 years. 15% of NFL players filed for bankruptcy within 12 years of retirement. These aren't failures of financial planning. They're failures of identity. When your financial reality changes faster than your psychological programming can adapt, your personality fractures. You're simultaneously the person who grew up with scarcity and the person with abundant resources. These two identities can't coexist peacefully, so one tries to destroy the other. Usually, the old identity wins by sabotaging the new financial reality until it matches the old programming. Financial identity has its origins in 6 areas: brain and neurobiology, temperament and personality, self-esteem, values and motivators, convictions, and habits. While temperament is largely biologically determined, wealth accumulation forcibly rewrites your beliefs, habits, values, and self-esteem. You're not choosing this transformation. It's happening to you, one financial decision at a time, until you wake up one day and don't recognize the person in the mirror. The question isn't whether money will change your personality. The research is clear, it will. But there's something even more insidious that happens alongside this internal transformation. Because while you're becoming a different person on the inside, the outside world is changing how it relates to you. And that shift, the social isolation that wealth creates, even as it opens financial doors, might be the cruelest part of the transformation. Here's something that will break your brain. You spend your entire life working toward financial freedom, believing that money will unlock a world of connections, opportunities, and meaningful relationships. Then you finally get there, and you discover the cruelest irony of wealth. The richer you become, the lonelier you feel. The more doors money opens financially, the more it closes socially. Welcome to the social paradox of wealth, where success becomes a prison nobody warned you about. Let me introduce you to Rachel, a client who sold her tech startup for $22 million at age 34. She'd spent 8 years grinding, sacrificing social life for business growth, promising herself that once she made it, everything would get easier. 6 months after the acquisition, she sat in my office describing a feeling she couldn't shake: profound loneliness. She had more money than she'd ever imagined, but fewer real friends than she'd had in college. Every conversation felt transactional. Every invitation made her wonder what people wanted from her. She'd achieved the dream and discovered it was a nightmare of isolation. This isn't an isolated case. Research from BBC's analysis of sudden wealth found that feelings of isolation and estrangement are among the most common psychological responses to accumulating significant money. While poverty is statistically linked to higher loneliness rates, the sudden acquisition of wealth creates a unique form of isolation that statistics don't capture well. It's not the loneliness of having no one, it's the loneliness of not knowing who's real. Here's why this happens, and the psychology is darker than you think. When you're broke or middle class, your social interactions operate on relatively equal footing. You split dinner checks, exchange favors, help each other move apartments. These small transactions of reciprocity build trust and connection. But wealth destroys that symmetry. Suddenly, picking up the check isn't generosity, it's expected. Helping a friend financially isn't kindness, it's obligation. The natural reciprocity that builds friendships gets replaced by unspoken power dynamics, where you're always the one with resources and everyone else is potentially asking for them. Studies on wealth and trustworthiness reveal something disturbing. Research across 8 different cultures, including Brazil, India, France, Nigeria, the Philippines, and the UK, consistently found that wealthier individuals are perceived as more trustworthy than poorer individuals. But here's the twist. Wealthy people themselves become less trusting of others. You're simultaneously seen as more trustworthy while trusting others less. This creates a psychological barrier where the wealthy retreat into guarded isolation because they can't distinguish genuine connection from financial opportunism. Rachel told me about a dinner party where an old college friend casually mentioned needing $15,000 to save her small business. The entire conversation shifted. Rachel spent the rest of the evening wondering if the friendship was real or if she'd just been invited to be pitched. She never gave the money, and the friendship quietly ended. That's the calculus of wealth. Every relationship becomes a cost-benefit analysis, and genuine connection becomes the casualty. Therapists working with wealthy clients report consistent themes: isolation, fear of betrayal, and emotional exhaustion. According to CNBC research, high net worth individuals describe feeling doubted and undervalued except for what they can provide materially. One therapist noted that wealthy clients often ask, "How do I know if someone likes me for me or for my money?" The question has no good answer, which is why many wealthy people simply withdraw. This withdrawal has measurable consequences. Higher income people spend less time socializing overall and more time alone. When they do socialize, they spend less time with family and more time with strategic professional relationships. It's not that they're antisocial. They're rationally responding to changed social dynamics by prioritizing relationships that feel less emotionally risky. But this strategy backfires because strategic relationships don't provide the deep connection humans need for psychological well-being. The family dynamics get even messier. Wealth doesn't just change friendships, it detonates family relationships. Rachel's siblings started treating her differently after the sale. Her brother, who'd never asked for financial help before, suddenly needed $50,000 for a business opportunity. Her sister made passive-aggressive comments about Rachel's new car. Holiday dinners became minefields of resentment, expectation, and guilt. The money that was supposed to give her freedom had trapped her in a web of complicated obligations and damaged relationships. Research shows this is universal. Inheritance and financial obligations increase family conflicts, with long-standing sibling rivalries flaring up when money enters the equation. Parents experience guilt about wealth burden or resentment over expectations tied to providing for younger generations. The wealth that should bring families together often tears them apart. Here's the statistic that crystallizes this paradox. Studies show the least wealthy groups have the highest risk of loneliness, about 28% among the poorest women compared to 18% among the wealthiest. So technically, wealthier people report less loneliness. But here's what that stat doesn't capture. Poor people are lonely because they lack resources. Wealthy people report less loneliness not because they have better connections, but because they've redefined what they want from social relationships. They're not lonely,
They're just not interested in connecting with others on a deep level anymore.
That's the truly disturbing part. Wealth doesn't just isolate you socially. It rewires your brain to care less about the isolation. You become more self-focused, more socially aloof, more comfortable alone, not because you found peace, but because your personality has been transformed to value independence over connection. You're not solving the loneliness problem. You're eliminating the need for connection entirely. Rachel eventually learned to navigate this new reality. She kept a small circle of pre-wealth friends who'd proven their loyalty, built boundaries around financial requests, and stopped trying to maintain relationships that felt transactional. But she admitted something painful. She'd become a lonelier, harder person. The transformation wasn't a choice, it was survival. The social paradox of wealth is that it gives you everything except the thing humans need most: genuine, uncomplicated connection with other people who see you, not your net worth. And once you've crossed that threshold, there's no going back to the simplicity of relationships based on equality rather than power. The question is whether you can build something new on the other side, a financial identity that includes wealth without being consumed by it. So you've inherited money scripts that control your behavior. Your personality has been transformed by wealth in ways you didn't choose. You've been socially isolated by success. The question everyone asks at this point is, can you actually rewrite your financial identity, or are you permanently stuck as the person money has made you become? Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You can't go back to who you were before money changed you. That person is gone. But here's the part that will save you. You don't have to become the person your money scripts are trying to turn you into either. There's a third option, and it requires doing something most people consider impossible. You have to build an entirely new identity from scratch, one that includes wealth without being controlled by it. Let me show you what this actually looks like. Remember Michael from Chapter 2, the software entrepreneur who sold his company for $28 million and felt like a stranger was inhabiting his body? 3 years after our first conversation, I interviewed him again. He'd done something radical. He'd given away $4 million to causes he cared about, invested $8 million in a diversified portfolio he never checks, kept $2 million liquid for opportunities, and went back to building a new company. Not because he needed the money, because he needed the identity of builder, not inheritor of his own success. His friends thought he was insane. Why start over when you've already won? But Michael understood something most people miss. Financial identity isn't about the money you have. It's about the relationship you have with money. And that relationship was poisoning him. The only way to fix it was to redefine what money meant to him. He shifted from money as scoreboard to money as tool for impact. That single reframe changed everything. This is the first principle of rebuilding your financial identity. Money must become neutral, not good, not evil, not a measure of worth, just a tool. When you achieve genuine neutrality, something fascinating happens. Your emotional reactions to financial events flatten. Landing a big deal doesn't make you feel validated. Taking a financial hit doesn't trigger existential crisis. The numbers inform decisions, but don't define your emotional state. Here's the test for neutrality. Check your bank account right now. What do you feel? If it's higher than expected and you get a surge of pride, your worth is still tied to your wealth. If it's lower and anxiety spikes, you're still letting money control your nervous system. True neutrality means those numbers are just data points, no more emotionally charged than checking the weather. The second principle is treating yourself as your most valuable asset. The wealth you accumulate in skills, knowledge, and capabilities can't be taken away by market crashes or economic downturns. This sounds like generic self-help advice until you see the statistics. Research shows that conscientiousness, the personality trait associated with being diligent and hardworking, has a higher correlation with wealth accumulation than gender or education. Your ability to create value is worth more than the value you've already created. This is why lottery winners go broke. They got the money, but not the identity of someone who can create money. So when the money runs out, they have nothing left. Self-made millionaires can lose everything and rebuild because their wealth isn't in their bank account. It's in their brain, their skills, their network, their ability to identify and execute on opportunities. Here's the part that will challenge everything you think you know about wealth. The ultimate marker of a healthy financial identity isn't how much money you have, it's how little you think about it. People with the healthiest relationships with money think about it the least because they've automated their systems, clarified their values, and built lives where money serves them rather than the other way around. But rewriting your financial identity isn't just personal psychology, it's social reconstruction too. Remember Rachel from Chapter 3, Isolated by Wealth. Her transformation came when she stopped trying to maintain relationships based on shared history and started building connections based on shared values. She joined nonprofit boards, connected with other entrepreneurs navigating similar transformations, and created firm boundaries around financial requests from family. She lost some relationships but gained peace. The process of identity reconstruction involves three dimensions. First, taking responsibility for who you're becoming. Your money scripts aren't your fault, but healing them is your responsibility. Second, accepting the transition. You have to mourn who you were while embracing who you're becoming, even when that person feels unfamiliar. Third, validating your new identity through action. You can't think your way into a new identity. You have to make different choices until those choices become automatic. Here's the insight that ties everything together. Your wealth will only grow to the extent that you do. This doesn't mean self-worth equals net worth. It means money responds to confidence, clarity, and intention. When you operate from intentional identity rather than inherited scripts, money becomes a natural byproduct of who you are, not something you're chasing or being controlled by. The financial identity crisis isn't a problem to solve, it's a transformation to embrace. Money will rewrite who you are whether you participate in the process or not. The only question is whether you'll take control of the rewriting or let unconscious scripts write your story for you. Choose wisely. Your future self is counting on the decision you make right now.